Hello, folks. You must be intelligent people who are interested in truth about this world. Most of the people have no time to do research on politics or economy or whatever. So they simply believe what they are told by the media or the governments. Sadly, that's what happened in the past and is happening today. Well, let's start today's topics. The NATO Article 5 is on paper. Do you really think NATO countries will fight for other countries' war? We highly doubt that. Nobody wants to go to war of any sorts. Period. We don't believe NATO member countries will help each other sacrificing their own people. It's an illusion. Sweden and Finland are very naive country to believe that joining NATO makes them securer than trading with Russia. Japan-US Security Treaty, Asian version of NATO, is also on paper. Japan and the US have the security treaty like NATO. However, most of Japanese are doubting that the US would fight for Japan, sacrificing their own soldiers. That treaty may be for installing military bases in Japan. It's highly unlikely that the US is willing to have direct conflict against China. If China seized a part of Japan, the US would see it as a Japan's problem, not as a US problem. Period. As what is going on in Ukraine, the US may give some weapons but won't sacrifice any of its soldiers in the war. Why? An answer is simple. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Japan destroyed the car industries in the US. The US public opinion can't justify supporting a potential enemy. Only your own country matters. Do you really think that the US-led NATO will help EU countries? There is no guarantee for NATO supports. NATO member countries will never sacrifice themselves. You've watched too many movies and must be living in a fantasy world. If war starts, people will try to evacuate from the country and run for safe places. Stupid or insane people want to go to war. You can't laugh at Russians who escaped from their country to avoid getting drafted. If you are not insane or stupid person, it's quite a right decision not to join the military. Nobody wants to take firearms and kill people. Only those cruel and crazy people really want to suit up and go into the battlefields to shoot and kill people. How do police officers behave when they have to deal with a mass shooting? First, they have to defend themselves, not to get shot by the shooter. Just to take down only one guy, many officers have to risk their lives. Do you know how difficult it is to fight in the battlefield? Joining the NATO doesn't mean your country is safe at all. War really cost your whole life. Russian can fight the war because it's the war for Russian people and territory. Do you really think American soldiers really want to fight and die for the war for other countries? Even though they are ordered to do so, their motivation is quite low. So they surely try to sabotage not to get killed or injured in the battle. It is hard for soldiers to fight, risking their lives. Remember, in the past, soldiers who tried to run away from the battle were killed by their own soldiers. Once Article 5 is applied, missiles strike your town. If the war means the end of the world, no one wants to start war. In the real world, that article is meaningless. There will be no chance to apply it in Europe, because as everybody knows, that is a lose-lose situation. As you know, there is no way to stop missile strikes. Today, missile-guided systems are so precise that no cities can stop missile attacks once they are launched. It's literally the end of the world even without nuclear weapons. They only can apply the Article 5 under very limited conditions. Remember, all the regimes with no nuclear weapons had been attacked and destroyed because people know those wars won't damage their own country by any means. In the 2003 Iraq invasion, the US used depleted uranium weapons to win the war. They used them because they knew Iraq had no ability to counterattack the US soil by nuclear weapons. These won't happen against Russia. NATO simply can't fight directly against Russia without ending the world. So that article has no point. NATO is for cutting defense budget. Why so many countries joined NATO? If people really think Russia is a threat to Europe, they are totally brainwashed by the media or the US. Most of our audiences watching this video don't believe that Russia is a threat. So what is a reason for joining NATO? NATO member countries' defense budget target is 2% of GDP. That number may not be so high and not mandated. The member countries may simply think NATO is a way to cut the defend budget. Politicians or public servants can save budget by joining NATO. They also don't have to care much about defense by relying on the US military force. NATO is really convenient for politicians in the member states. For the US defense industries, they can sell more and more weapons to those countries. Simply put, joining NATO means member countries become less and less responsible for defending their own people. That means they will be more vulnerable to enemy attacks. Perhaps Sweden and Finland politicians are using the war in Ukraine as an excuse to abandon neutrality and to join NATO, knowing there is no existential threat of Russia. Thank you for watching, and let's make our world safer.